The day they sold me like cattle, I learned something about survival. It doesn't ask permission. I was 17 when my father traded me for $300 and a handshake. No ceremony, no goodbye. Just hands exchanging money while I stood there like livestock waiting to be branded. They say some people are born into hell. I was sold into mine. This is the story of how I clawed my way out, not with prayers or tears, but with dirt under my nails and fire in my chest. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The morning started like most mornings in that godforsaken house, with the sound of glass breaking and my father's voice cutting through the walls like a blade. I was in the kitchen, hands deep in cold dishwater, when I heard the horse outside. Not our horse. We didn't have horses anymore. We didn't have much of anything except debts and the kind of silence that comes after too many years of screaming. I dried my hands on a rag that had been white once, maybe a decade ago, and moved to the window. A man sat on a dark bay mare, tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low against the early sun. He didn't dismount, just sat there, waiting like he had all the time in the world. My father came out of the house, stumbling slightly. Drunk already, or still drunk from last night, hard to tell the difference anymore. "You Vance?" the man on the horse called down. "Depends who's asking. Marcus Hale. We spoke last week." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I knew that name. Everyone in 3 counties knew that name. Hale owned half the territory out west, land so vast you could ride for days and never see the end of it. He was a ghost story and a real man all at once. Ruthless, they said. Hard as the land he worked. My father glanced back at the house. At me, standing in the window. "She inside?" Hale asked. "Not as anyone inside. Not as your daughter home. Just she. Like I was a thing." A transaction already completed in his mind. I stepped back from the window, but not fast enough. Hale's eyes found mine through the dirty glass, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. His face was weathered, late 30s maybe, with the kind of lines that come from squinting into too many hard sunsets. There was no cruelty in his expression, but there was no kindness either, just evaluation. My father disappeared into the house. I heard his boots on the floorboards, heavy and purposeful. "Alara," he shouted, "get out here!" I didn't move. "Now, girl." I walked outside because there was nowhere else to go. The morning air was cool, still holding on to the ghost of night, and the sky looked wrong, too heavy, like it was pressing down on the world. My father grabbed my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Stand up straight. Look presentable." I wanted to laugh. Presentable. I was wearing a dress that had been patched so many times the original fabric was barely visible. My hair was tied back with a piece of string. I hadn't owned anything new since I was 12. Hale dismounted, slow and deliberate. Up close, he was taller than I'd thought, broader. He smelled like leather and wood smoke and something else, the kind of clean scent that comes from open spaces and wind. He looked at me the way you'd look at a horse before buying it, not leering, not hungry, just assessing. "She healthy?" he asked my father. "Strong as they come, good worker, doesn't complain." "I wasn't asking you." Hale turned to me. "You sick? Injured?" I met his eyes. They were dark, almost black in the early light. "No." "You know how to work?" "Yes." "Cooking? Cleaning?" "Yes." "Livestock? Horses?" "Some." He nodded, like I'd passed some kind of test I hadn't known I was taking. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. The coins inside made a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet morning. 300, like we agreed, Hale said, counting out the money into my father's palm. I watched the transaction happen, watched my father's face light up the way it only did when he was holding money or a bottle, watched him count it twice, lick his thumb, count it again. "Pleasure doing business," my father said, and there wasn't even a tremor in his voice, not even a pause. I'd known it was coming. He'd told me a week ago, drunk and angry after losing money he didn't have in a card game 3 towns over. Told me I was a drain on him, always had been. Told me some rancher out west needed help and was willing to pay for it. But knowing and experiencing are different things. "Get your things," Hale said to me. "I don't have things." He looked at me for a long moment. "Nothing?" "Nothing worth bringing." Something flickered across his face, not quite sympathy, but close. He walked to his horse and pulled a bedroll from behind the saddle. "You'll need this. Gets cold at night." I took it because I wasn't stupid. Then I just stood there, waiting for whatever came next. My father had already gone back inside. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. Hale swung up into the saddle, then extended his hand down to me. "You ever ridden?" "Once or twice." "You'll learn fast then. Come on." I looked at his hand, looked at the house behind me, rotting wood and broken dreams and 23 years of living in a cage built from someone else's failures. Then I took his hand. His grip was solid, certain. He pulled me up behind him in one smooth motion, and suddenly I was higher than I'd been in years, the world spreading out below me in shades of brown and gold and dying green. "Hold on," he said. I gripped the back of the saddle as the horse moved beneath us, powerful and sure. We rode out of that yard without looking back, and I felt something inside me shift. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. A kind of grim determination. Whatever was waiting for me out there in that wilderness, whatever fresh hell Marcus Hale's ranch turned out to be, I would survive it. I always had. The ride took 3 days. Hale didn't talk much. He'd find a spot to camp when the light started dying, build a fire with practiced efficiency, and hand me jerky and hardtack without comment. We'd eat in silence, then he'd roll himself in a blanket on one side of the fire while I took the other. He didn't try anything. Didn't even look at me the wrong way. Somehow that made it worse. Like I wasn't even worth the consideration. On the second day, we passed through a town, if you could call it that. A handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads like they were afraid to be alone. Hale stopped at the general store and came out with supplies. He also handed me a package wrapped in brown paper. "What is it?" I asked. "Boots. Yours are falling apart." I looked down at my feet. He was right. The soles were more whole than leather. "Try them on. They fit. Well-made, sturdy, probably cost more than everything I'd ever owned combined." "Thank you," I said, because I'd been raised with some manners, even in hell. He just nodded and mounted up again. That night, camped under stars so thick they looked like spilled salt, I finally asked the question that had been burning in me since we left. "Why'd you buy me?" Hale was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Needed help. Heard your father was looking to make a deal. So you bought a person." "I bought labor. There's a difference." "Is there?" He looked at me across the fire. "You're free to leave any time you want. Won't stop you. Won't chase you down." "Where would I go?" "Anywhere but back there." "Fair point." "The ranch," he continued. "It's big. Needs work. Lots of it. You pull your weight, you'll have food, shelter, and a wage at the end of every month." "A wage?" $20. More if you prove yourself." I stared at him. $20 was more money than I'd ever had in my life. "Why didn't you just hire someone normal then?" "Tried." "No one wants to work that far out. Too isolated, too hard. So you bought someone who couldn't say no." His jaw tightened. "When you put it like that, yeah, guess I did." At least he was honest. "What happens if I can't do the work?" I asked. "Then you can't do it, but I think you can. You don't know anything about me. I know you've got that look." "What look?" "The look of someone who's been fighting their whole life. People like that don't quit easy." He was right about that too. We rode on. I knew we were close when the land started changing. The scrubby plains gave way to rolling hills, and in the distance, mountains rose like broken teeth against the sky. The grass here was greener, fed by streams that cut through the valley like silver veins. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving kind of way. Then I saw the ranch. It sprawled across the valley floor, a main house, a barn that had seen better days, fences that needed mending, and corrals filled with horses. The house itself was 2 stories, wood frame, with a porch that wrapped around the front. It had been built by someone who cared once. You could see that in the bones of it. But time and neglect had taken their toll. Paint peeled from the siding, shutters hung crooked. One section of the porch roof sagged like a broken promise. Hale pulled the horse to a stop at the top of a rise overlooking the property. "That's home," he said, and there was something in his voice I couldn't quite name. "It's big," I said. "Used to run 200 head of cattle. Now we're down to about 50. Lost most of them 2 winters ago." "What happened?" "Storm. Worst in 30 years. Buried half the valley in snow." He paused. My wife went out to check on the animals. Didn't make it back. Oh, so that's what I heard in his voice. Not pride, not satisfaction, grief. How long ago? I asked quietly. 3 years. 3 years of letting the place fall apart, because what was the point of maintaining something when the person you built it for was gone? I understood that better than I wanted to. There's others here? I asked. My son, Jonah. He's 16. Good kid. Quiet. We rode down toward the house. As we got closer, I could see more of the damage. Broken fence rails, a water trough filled with dead leaves, tools left out to rust in the weather. A boy emerged from the barn as we approached, tall and lean, with his father's dark hair but lighter eyes. He stopped when he saw me, surprise clear on his face. Pa? He called out. Jonah, this is Alara Vance. She'll be helping around the place. Jonah's eyes went from me to his father and back again. He wasn't stupid. He knew what this was. Hi, I said, because someone had to say something. Hi, he echoed, but his voice was wary. Hale dismounted and helped me down. My legs were shaky after 3 days on horseback, and I stumbled slightly. Jonah moved forward instinctively, hand out to steady me, then stopped himself. You all right? He asked. Fine, just need to walk it off. Hale was already leading the horse toward the barn. Jonah, show her the house. Get her settled in the spare room upstairs. Yes, sir. We stood there awkwardly for a moment after Hale disappeared into the barn. I'm not here to cause trouble, I said finally. Jonah looked at me, really looked at me. You got a choice in this. Not much of one. He nodded slowly. Yeah, figured. Then surprisingly, he smiled, just a little. Well, welcome to the middle of nowhere. Hope you like hard work and terrible coffee. Despite everything, I almost smiled back. I've had worse. Doubt it. Come on, I'll show you around. Ta-tum. The house was bigger inside than it looked. The main floor had a kitchen, a living area with a stone fireplace, and a small office crammed with papers and ledgers. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust. We don't use most of it, Jonah explained as he led me upstairs. Pa sleeps down here in the office most nights. I've got a room up here. There's 2 more. One was... He stopped. One's still set up as a guest room. You can have that one. He pushed open a door at the end of the hall. The room was small but clean, with a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the valley. Someone had made an effort here. There were curtains on the window, a quilt on the bed. Ma used to keep this ready, Jonah said quietly, in case we had visitors. You don't have to give me this room. Yeah, I do. Pa would have my hide if I put you anywhere else. He set my bedroll on the bed. Bathroom's down the hall. Water's usually warm in the evenings after the sun's been on the tank. You need anything? I'm fine. He lingered in the doorway. Look, I know this is weird. I don't know what Pa was thinking, and I'm not saying this is right, but for what it's worth, he's not a bad man. He's just... broken? Yeah, something like that. After he left, I sat on the bed and looked around my new prison. Because that's what it was, really. Prettier than the last one, maybe. Bigger. But still a cage. I could run. Hale had said I could leave any time, but to where? To what? No. Running was done. If I was going to be stuck here, I'd make the best of it. Dinner that first night was tense. Jonah had made stew from dried beef and vegetables that had seen better days. We ate at a scarred wooden table in the kitchen, the silence broken only by the scrape of spoons on bowls. You'll start tomorrow, Hale said finally. Kitchen and house first, then we'll see what else you can handle. All right. Jonah will show you where everything is. I can do that, Jonah said. More silence. I finished my stew and stood to clear the dishes. Both of them looked at me like I'd sprouted wings. What? I asked. You don't have to do that, Jonah said. I'm going to be doing dishes anyway. Might as well start now. I carried the bowls to the sink and started working. The pump was stiff, but I got it going. Behind me, I heard the scrape of chairs as they both stood. She's tougher than she looks, Jonah said quietly. Yeah, Hale replied. I know. I woke before dawn the next morning, old habits dying hard. The house was quiet and dark. I dressed in the same worn clothes I'd arrived in and made my way downstairs. The kitchen was cold. I got the stove going, found coffee in a tin, and put water on to boil. While I waited, I started looking around. The place was a mess. Not dirty exactly, but neglected. Pots and pans piled haphazardly in cupboards. Dry goods stored without any organization. A layer of grease on every surface. I'd seen worse. Hell, I'd lived worse. By the time the sun started creeping over the mountains, I had coffee brewing and had made a mental inventory of what needed doing. Hale appeared first, drawn by the smell. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. Me at the stove, coffee ready, the kitchen already looking more organized. "You're up early," he said. "So are you. Ranch doesn't run itself. House doesn't clean itself." The ghost of something that might have been a smile crossed his face. "Fair enough." He poured himself a cup of coffee and stood by the window, looking out at his land while the sky turned from black to gray to gold. "It's beautiful," I said quietly. "The valley." "It is." He took a sip of coffee. "We built this place when I was 25, my wife and I. We were going to have a dozen kids, fill this whole house with noise and life." He paused. "Funny how things turn out." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Jonah came down a few minutes later, yawning and rumpled. He stopped dead when he saw the coffee. "Is that fresh?" "Made it this morning," I said. He poured himself a cup and took a sip. His eyes widened. "You actually know how to make coffee." "It's not hard." "You haven't tasted Pa's coffee." "I heard that," Hale said mildly. "You were meant to." There was affection in the banter, easy and worn smooth by years of practice. It made something in my chest ache. After breakfast, Jonah gave me a proper tour. The barn was massive, built to hold equipment and feed and horses. Currently, it held about half of what it should. "We used to have hands," Jonah explained, 6 or 7 guys working year-round. But after Ma died, Pa let them all go. Said he didn't need them. Did he? Need them? Yeah, we can barely keep up with what we've got now. He showed me the chicken coop, the smokehouse, the root cellar. "Most of this is your domain now, I guess. Pa and I handle the animals and the land. You handle everything else." Everything else turned out to be a lot. I spent the first week just getting the house in order, scrubbing floors, washing windows, organizing the kitchen until it made sense. I found dishes that hadn't been used in years, linens stored away and forgotten. In the evenings, I'd collapse into bed with muscles screaming and hands raw, but there was something satisfying about it. Something clean. By the second week, I'd expanded my territory. I fixed the broken shutters with nails I found in the barn. I patched the hole in the porch roof with spare wood. I weeded the garden plot behind the house that had gone wild. Hale and Jonah watched all this with a mixture of surprise and something else I couldn't quite name. "She doesn't quit, does she?" I heard Jonah say one evening. "No," Hale replied. "She doesn't." I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. Every broken thing I fixed, every piece of order I created from chaos was proof. Proof that I was more than what I'd been sold for. Proof that I could take something dying and make it live again. Proof that I mattered. 3 weeks in, I made my first mistake. I was in the barn, trying to move a bag of feed that was too heavy. I should have asked for help. Should have waited. But I'd been managing on my own my whole life, and old patterns are hard to break. I was halfway across the barn when my foot caught on something. I went down hard, the bag landing on top of me, driving the air from my lungs. I lay there stunned and gasping when I heard boots running. "Alara!" Jonah's voice, sharp with panic. He hauled the bag off me with strength I didn't know he had, then knelt beside me. "Are you hurt? Can you breathe?" I nodded, still trying to get air back into my lungs. "What the hell were you thinking?" Hale's voice, not panicked, but hard. "That bag weighs 100 pounds. I've lifted heavier," I managed. "Not alone, you haven't. Not here." He reached down and pulled me to my feet with one easy motion. For a second, I was close enough to see the worry in his eyes before it shuddered away behind that wall he kept up. "If you need help, you ask," he said. "That's not weakness. That's sense. I can handle myself. I know you can, but you don't have to anymore. That's the whole point." I looked at him, this hard man who'd bought me like livestock, and then given me boots and a room with curtains, and told me I was free to leave. "I don't know how to do that," I said quietly. "What?" Ask for help. I don't know how. Something in his expression softened. Then learn. Start now. You need help with the feed? I wanted to say no. Every instinct screamed to refuse, but I swallowed my pride and nodded. Yeah, I need help. Between the three of us, we got the feed stored properly. And when we were done, Hale clapped me on the shoulder, brief, impersonal, but somehow more meaningful than any words. Summer deepened into fall. The days grew shorter, the air sharper. I fell into a rhythm with the work, with the ranch, with the two men I now shared my life with. Jonah and I developed an easy friendship. He taught me how to handle the horses properly, showed me which cattle were troublemakers, told me stories about growing up here when the place was thriving. Hale remained distant but not unkind. He treated me with respect, paid me on time, and slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, started asking my opinion on things. What we should plant in the garden, whether we needed more chickens, how to organize the supply runs. I wasn't property anymore. I wasn't quite family, but I was something. Then came the day that changed everything. It was early October, cold enough that you could see your breath in the morning. Hale was working with a new horse in the corral, a massive black stallion he'd bought off a rancher passing through. The horse was beautiful and mean as hell. I was hanging wash on the line when I heard the commotion. Shouts, the thunder of hooves. I dropped the sheet I was holding and ran. The stallion had Hale cornered against the fence, rearing and striking with hooves that could crush a skull. Hale was on the ground, one arm up to protect his head, trapped. I didn't think. I grabbed the nearest thing, a metal bucket, and charged into the corral, yelling and banging the bucket against the fence. The noise was deafening. The horse wheeled toward me, ears flat, eyes rolling. "Come on!" I screamed at it. "Over here!" It charged. I dove to the side, rolled, came up running. The horse followed, giving Hale time to get to the fence and over it. Now I was alone in the corral with 1,500 pounds of pissed-off animal. "Alara, get out!" Hale's voice, ragged. But the horse was between me and the fence. I backed up slowly, keeping my eyes on it, speaking in a low, steady voice. "Easy, easy now. Nobody's trying to hurt you." The stallion snorted, pawed the ground. "You're just scared, aren't you? New place, new people. I get it." I kept talking, kept backing up, until my shoulders hit the fence. The horse advanced slowly. Then Jonah was there, coming in from the other side, rope in hand. He got the loop around the stallion's neck just as it lunged at me. The horse turned on him instead, but now Hale was back in, moving despite what must have been screaming pain. Together, they got the horse under control and into a stall. I sagged against the fence, shaking. Hale climbed back over and just stood there, looking at me. His shirt was torn, and blood seeped from a gash on his arm. "You saved my life," he said. "You would have done the same." "That doesn't make it less true." He extended his good hand. "Thank you." I took it. His grip was warm and solid and human. "You're welcome." That night, after I'd cleaned and bandaged Hale's arm, he'd tried to refuse my help, but I'd insisted. We all sat around the kitchen table. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen," Jonah said, shaking his head. "That horse could have killed you. Could have killed your father, too." "Yeah, but he's been doing this his whole life. You're—" "What? Just the help?" "That's not what I meant." "I know." I did know, but the words still stung a little. Hale had been quiet, staring into his coffee. Now he looked up. "I owe you, more than I can repay." "You don't owe me anything. We're square." "Square how?" "You gave me a place to go when I had nowhere. Gave me work and wages and treated me like a person. We're square." He held my eyes for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone broken. Someone who'd do the minimum and coast. Instead, I got someone who's rebuilding my ranch and saving my life." "I'm not rebuilding your ranch." "You're not." He gestured around at the kitchen, at the house beyond. "Everything you've touched has come back to life. The garden's producing, the house is clean, things work again. That's not rebuilding?" I didn't know what to say to that. "You're more than help, Ilara," he said quietly. "You've become part of this place, part of—" He stopped himself. "Part of what makes it run. Part of what makes it home," I thought he'd been about to say. But he didn't. Not yet. Winter came hard and fast that year. Snow piled up against the house, and the wind howled through the valley like something alive and angry. We settled into closer quarters, the three of us. Long nights around the fire while Jonah read aloud from books his mother had loved. Days spent working on equipment repairs in the barn, too cold to do much outside. I learned things about them. Learned that Hale played guitar, though he rarely did anymore. Learned that Jonah wanted to be a veterinarian someday. Learned that they both missed the woman who'd died 3 years ago, with an ache that hadn't faded. They learned things about me too, though I didn't give up my secrets easily. Small things at first. That I'd never learned to read music, that I was afraid of deep water, that I dreamed sometimes of a life where I hadn't been sold, but I didn't know what that life would look like. One night, snowed in and restless, Jonah asked me about my family. "Don't have one," I said. "What about your mother?" "Died when I was young, some kind of fever." "And your father?" I was quiet for a long time. He was a hard man, made harder by circumstances. Or maybe he was always that way and I just didn't see it when I was young. "Did he ever—" Jonah hesitated. "Did he ever hurt you?" Hale looked up sharply from the saddle he was mending. "Not in the way you're thinking," I said carefully. "He never hit me, if that's what you're asking. But there are other ways to hurt someone. Other ways to make them feel worthless." "I'm sorry," Jonah said quietly. "Don't be. It made me strong. Made me a survivor. That's worth something." "It's worth everything," Hale said, and there was something fierce in his voice. "Survival is what separates the living from the dead. Never apologize for surviving." Our eyes met across the room, and I felt something shift, some understanding passing between us. We were the same, him and me, both survivors of different kinds of loss, both trying to rebuild from the wreckage. Spring arrived like a promise kept, melting the snow and turning the valley green again. With the thaw came work, calving season, fence repairs, getting the fields ready for planting. I threw myself into it all, working alongside Hale and Jonah from dawn until dark. My hands got rougher, my skin darkened from the sun, and I felt myself changing, growing stronger, more certain. This place was changing me. Or maybe I was just becoming who I'd always been meant to be. One morning in early April, I was in the barn when I heard horses approaching. A lot of them. I stepped outside to see 5 men riding into the yard. They had the look of hired guns, hard-eyed and well-armed. The man in front was older, maybe 50, with a beard going gray and a face like weathered leather. Hale came out of the house, Jonah right behind him. I saw Hale's hand rest casually on the gun at his hip. "Colton Briggs," Hale said, and his voice was flat. "What brings you to my land?"
"Just being neighborly, Hale. Thought I'd check in, see how you're managing out here all alone." "We're managing fine." Briggs' eyes swept over the ranch, taking in the repairs, the organization. Then they landed on me. He smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Who's this?" "None of your concern. Pretty girl, awful isolated out here. Hope she's being taken care of properly." I felt my hands curl into fists.
Hale stepped forward, putting himself between me and Briggs. "State your business or ride on." "Business?" Briggs shifted in his saddle. "I've been thinking, this valley's too big for one operation. You've got more land than you can work properly. I'm prepared to make you a fair offer for the eastern section." "Not for sale." "You haven't heard my offer." "Don't need to. This land stays whole. That was the deal when I bought it, and it's the deal now." "Things change, Hale. You're running a skeleton crew here. Can't keep up forever." "I'll keep up as long as I need to." Briggs smiled again. "We'll see. Offer stands if you change your mind, but it won't stand forever." It was a threat, thinly veiled. They rode out, leaving tension thick in the air behind them. "Who was that?" I asked. "Trouble," Hale said. "Briggs owns the land to the north. He's been trying to buy me out for years. Every time I say no, he gets a little more aggressive." "What kind of aggressive?" "The kind that cuts fences and spooks cattle and makes accidents happen." He looked at me. "You need to be careful from now on. Don't go anywhere alone. Stay close to the house or the barn." "I'm not afraid of him." "You should be. Men like Briggs don't take no for an answer." But as I watched Hale walk back to the house, shoulders tight with worry, I felt something different than fear. I felt anger. This was my home now, mine, and I'd be damned if I'd let some bully take it. The next morning, I found the first fence cut. I'd gone out early to check on the cattle in the eastern pasture, the same land Briggs had tried to buy. 3 sections of barbed wire had been cleanly severed, and 20 head of cattle were gone, just vanished into the pre-dawn darkness like they'd never existed. I ran back to the house, my boots slipping in the dew-wet grass. Hale was already up, standing on the porch with his coffee, watching the sun break over the mountains. "The fence is cut," I said, breathless. "Eastern pasture, cattle are gone." His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that carefully controlled calm he wore like armor. "How many head?" 20, maybe more. I didn't count exactly. He set his coffee down with deliberate precision. "Jonah!" he called. "Get the horses saddled, now." Jonah appeared from the barn, took one look at his father's face, and moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. We rode out together, the 3 of us, following the trail the stolen cattle had left. It wasn't hard to track. They hadn't bothered to hide their tracks. That's what made it worse. They wanted us to know. The trail led north, straight toward Briggs's land. Hale pulled up at the property line, staring at the clear evidence of where our cattle had been driven across. His hands were white-knuckled on the reins. "Pa," Jonah said quietly, "we can't just ride onto his land. That's asking for a fight. Maybe a fight's what we need. And maybe a fight's exactly what he wants. You go over there guns blazing, you'll give him cause to call the law. Say you were trespassing, threatening him." I watched Hale struggle with it, the need for action warring with sense. Finally, sense won. Barely. "We go to town," he said. "File a complaint with the sheriff." "You think the sheriff will help?" I asked. Hale's laugh was bitter. "No, but at least we'll have it on record." We turned the horses and rode back in silence. The whole way, I could feel the anger radiating off Hale like heat from a forge. This was more than stolen cattle. This was a challenge, a line drawn in the dirt, and men like Marcus Hale didn't back down from challenges. The sheriff's office in town was a small wooden building that smelled like tobacco and old paper. The sheriff himself was a heavy-set man named Dutch Carter, with a face that had probably been hard once but had gone soft around the edges. He listened to Hale's complaint with the expression of a man who'd heard it all before and cared about none of it. "You got proof it was Briggs?" he asked when Hale finished. "Tracks lead straight to his property." "Tracks don't mean much. Could have been anyone drove them that direction." "Dutch, you know damn well. I know you and Briggs have history. I know you don't like each other, but unless you got actual proof, there's nothing I can do." "So he can just steal from me and you'll sit here doing nothing?" Dutch leaned back in his chair, making it creak. "I'll ride out there, have a talk with him. But between you and me, Marcus, you might want to consider his offer. Sell that eastern section. Get some peace." Hale's hands curled into fists on the desk. "That land was my wife's favorite place on the whole ranch. We scattered her ashes there. I'm not selling it so some land-grabbing bastard can—" "Marcus," Jonah's hand on his father's shoulder, gentle but firm. "Let's go." Outside, Hale stood on the wooden sidewalk, breathing hard, staring at nothing. "He's not going to help," I said. "No, he's not." "So what do we do?" Hale looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked lost. "I don't know. We can't guard every inch of fence. Can't watch the cattle day and night. We're 3 people trying to run a ranch that needs 10. "Then we get smarter," I said. "We figure out what he wants and make it harder for him to get it. What he wants is my land." "No. What he wants is for you to give up. There's a difference." Jonah was nodding. "She's right. He's trying to break us down, make us desperate enough to sell, so we don't let him see us sweat." Hale looked between us, something shifting in his expression. "When did you 2 get so smart?" "We learned from watching you be stubborn," Jonah said with a half smile. We rode back to the ranch, and I spent the ride thinking, planning. By the time we got home, I had the beginnings of an idea. That night after dinner, I laid it out. "We can't stop him from cutting fences," I said, "but we can make it pointless. We move the main herd closer to the house, keep them in the pastures we can actually see. The eastern section, we use it for something else." "Like what?" Hale asked. "Horses, the ones we're breaking. They're harder to steal than cattle, and they're worth more. If he wants to cut fences there, all he'll find is empty grass. And if he goes after the horses? Horses are smart. Cattle are dumb and slow. Horses will run, make noise, cause a ruckus. We'll hear it. Hale considered this, his fingers drumming on the table. It's not a bad idea. It's a start, I said, and we fortify here. Fix every weak point. Make this place a fortress he can't crack. That's a lot of work. Good thing I like work. Something that might have been respect crossed Hale's face. All right, we try it your way. Over the next 2 weeks, we transformed the ranch. I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life, and that was saying something. We moved the cattle, reinforced every fence within sight of the house, and set up a rotation where someone was always awake, always watching. I took the midnight to dawn shift most nights. I didn't sleep much anyway, and I liked the quiet of those hours. Just me and the stars and the sound of the wind through the valley. One night, about 3 weeks after the first theft, I was sitting on the porch with a rifle across my lap when I heard movement in the barn. Too heavy to be a cat, too deliberate to be random. I stood slowly, clicking the safety off, and moved toward the barn. The door was cracked open. Through the gap, I could see a figure moving in the shadows, doing something near the feed storage. I pushed the door open with my foot, rifle raised. Don't move. The figure spun. It was a young man, maybe 20, dressed in dark clothes. He had a can of something in his hand, and the smell hit me immediately. Kerosene. Drop it, I said. He hesitated. I said, drop it. The can hit the floor with a hollow thunk. His hands came up slowly. Who sent you? I asked. Nobody sent me. I just, try again. You're standing in my barn with enough kerosene to burn this place to the ground. Someone sent you. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the door behind me. Looking for an escape? I asked. You'd have to get past me first, and I grew up with nothing to lose. How about you? That seemed to break something in him. Briggs, Colton Briggs. He said just to scare you, not to actually scare us by burning our barn down? Just a small fire. Just enough to make you think about selling. I heard footsteps behind me. Hale appeared in the doorway, his own rifle in hand, Jonah right behind him. What's this? Hale asked, his voice deadly calm. Briggs sent him to torch the barn, I said. Hale's face went dark. He walked up to the young man, and I saw the kid shrink back. But Hale didn't hit him, just looked at him with those hard eyes. You know what happens to arsonists out here? Hale asked quietly. The kid shook his head. Nothing good. Now I'm going to give you 2 choices. 1, I can tie you up and ride you into town, let the sheriff deal with you. Of course, the sheriff's in Briggs's pocket, so that might not go the way you hope. What's the second choice? You walk out of here right now and you tell Briggs that if he wants this ranch, he's going to have to come take it himself. And you tell him that next time he sends someone in the night, that someone's going home in a box. Understand? The kid nodded frantically. Get out! He ran. We listened to the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Should have held him, Jonah said. Could have used him as evidence. Evidence for what? Hale asked. Dutch won't do anything. This way, we send a message. What message? I asked. That we'll let them walk away? That we know, that we're watching, that we're not afraid. He looked at me. Good catch. If you hadn't been out here, that's why I'm out here. He nodded slowly. You didn't have to take midnight watch. That's the hardest shift. I know. So why do you? I thought about how to answer that. Because this place matters to me. I don't know when that happened, but it did. And I'm not going to let someone burn it down. In the lantern light, I saw something in Hale's expression I hadn't seen before. Something soft. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For caring about all this. You didn't have to. Yeah, I did. We stood there in the barn, the 3 of us, and I felt something solidify. We weren't just people living in the same place anymore. We were a unit, a team, a family, almost. The thought scared me more than the fire ever could have. The next day I was in the house making bread when Jonah came running in, his face flushed with excitement. Alara, come quick. You have to see this. I wiped the flour off my hands and followed him outside. He led me to the eastern pasture, where Hale was standing by the fence, looking at something in the distance. As I got closer, I saw what they were staring at. The horses we'd moved out there, the ones we were breaking, were running. Not panicked running, but playing. And in the middle of them was a new foal, all spindly legs and awkward grace. Morning Glory dropped her baby last night, Jonah said, grinning. Must have been right after you came in from watch. The foal was beautiful, dark bay like its mother, with a white star on its forehead. Have you named it? I asked. That's a mare's job, Hale said, and it took me a second to realize he was talking about me. I'm not. You found the mare. You've been taking care of her. You named the foal. I watched the baby stumble around on new legs, testing out this strange world it had been born into. Hope, I said finally. Name her Hope. That's a good name, Hale said quietly. We stood there watching until the foal settled down to nurse, and I felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not quite happiness, but close. A sense of rightness, of being exactly where I was supposed to be. The feeling lasted about 3 days. Then Briggs cut the water. We noticed it when this creek that fed the southern pastures started running dry. Hale rode upstream and found a new dam, fresh-cut logs blocking the flow, diverting it north onto Briggs's land. That son of a bitch, Hale said when he came back, his face dark with rage. That water's been running through this valley for 1,000 years. Can't he do that? I asked. The creek starts on his land. Legally, maybe, but there's laws about water rights, about not cutting off your downstream neighbors. Which the sheriff won't enforce, Jonah said. No, he won't. That night, Hale rode out alone. I heard him leave after midnight, quiet as he could manage. I got up and watched from the window as he headed north. When he came back 3 hours later, he was soaking wet and there was blood on his knuckles. I met him at the door. What did you do? What needed doing? The water's running again. Marcus, don't. I know what you're going to say. That I shouldn't have gone alone, that I could have been killed, that I should have waited. He brushed past me, heading for the kitchen. But I'm tired of waiting, tired of playing defense. I followed him. So what, you're just going to keep escalating until someone ends up dead? Better him than us. And what about Jonah? What about this place? You die in some stupid fight. What happens to all of this? He spun to face me, and the rawness in his expression made me take a step back. You think I don't know that? You think I don't lie awake every night terrified that I'm going to fail my son the same way I failed my wife? You didn't fail her. She died because I couldn't protect her. Because I let her go out in that storm. Because I was too stubborn to ask for help, to hire more hands, to admit we were in over our heads. His voice cracked. And now, I'm doing it again, putting everyone at risk because I can't let go of this land. I'd never seen him like this. The armor was gone, stripped away, and underneath was just a man drowning in grief and fear and exhaustion. Then let me help, I said. Really help. Not just with the house and the cooking, but with all of it. Teach me the ranch work. Teach me how to track cattle, how to read the land, how to do everything you and Jonah do. Make me useful. You are useful. I mean really useful. Stop treating me like I'm delicate. I'm not. I never was. He looked at me for a long moment. No, you're not. So teach me. It's hard work. Harder than what you've been doing. Good. I like hard work, remember? Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face. All right, we start tomorrow. True to his word, the next morning, Hale pulled me out of bed before dawn and handed me a pair of worn leather gloves. If you're going to work cattle, you'll need these, he said. The work was brutal. He taught me how to rope, how to brand, how to check hooves for rot and eyes for infection. Taught me to read the sky for weather, the grass for drought, the behavior of the herd for signs of predators or disease. I fell into bed every night with new bruises and aching muscles. But I learned fast, driven by a need I couldn't quite name. Jonah watched all this with bemused approval. She's better at this than half the hands we used to have, he told his father one evening. She's tougher than all of them, Hale replied. I tried not to let that compliment mean as much as it did. 3 weeks into my new education, we were working the northern fence line when we found more damage. Not just cut wire this time, but entire posts pulled out of the ground. A section of fence about 100 yards long just gone. This is different, Jonah said, examining the damage. This is more aggressive. Hale's face was stone. He's pushing harder, testing how far he can go before we break. So what do we do? Before Hale could answer, we heard riders approaching, a lot of them. Briggs appeared over the rise with 8 men, all armed. They spread out in a line, cutting off our retreat. "Hale!" Briggs called out, his voice carrying across the open ground. "We need to talk." "Nothing to talk about, Briggs. Get off my land." "See, that's the problem. I don't think this is your land anymore. I think you've abandoned it. Can't maintain it properly. Can't protect it." "I'm maintaining it just fine." "Really?" "Because I've seen fence down all over this section. Looks neglected to me. Dangerous even. Hate to see someone get hurt because you can't keep up with basic maintenance." It was a threat wrapped in false concern, and everyone knew it. Hale's hand moved toward his rifle, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I said quietly. "We're outnumbered." "Listen to the girl," Briggs said. "She's got more sense than you do. Smart girl, pretty too. Shame she's wasting herself out here with a washed-up rancher and his boy." I felt Hale tense beside me. "Briggs, I'm going to give you one chance to ride away before this gets ugly." "Ugly?" Briggs laughed. "It's already ugly, Hale. You just haven't admitted it yet. This valley isn't big enough for both of us. And we both know I've got the numbers, the money, and the backing. You've got pride and dead woman's memory." That's when Hale snapped. He went for his rifle fast, but Briggs's men were faster. 3 guns came up, all pointed at us. "Don't be stupid," Briggs said, his voice cold now. "I didn't come here to kill you, but I will if you make me." I stepped forward, putting myself between Hale and the guns. "We'll fix the fence. We'll handle our land, but you need to leave. Now." Briggs looked at me with something like amusement. "You got fire in you. I like that. Tell you what, you ever get tired of playing house with these two, you come work for me. I pay better. I'm not for sale." "Everyone's for sale, sweetheart. It's just a matter of price." "Not me. Not anymore." Something in my voice must have convinced him I meant it, because he shrugged and turned his horse. "Suit yourself." "But this isn't over, Hale, not by a long shot." They rode off, leaving us standing in the ruined fence line. Hale was shaking, whether from anger or adrenaline or fear. I couldn't tell. Maybe all 3. "We can't keep doing this," Jonah said quietly. "One of these days it's going to end in bloodshed." "I know," Hale said. "I know." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those guns pointed at us, kept hearing Briggs's voice, the casual cruelty of it, the certainty that he would win. I got up and went downstairs, thinking I'd make tea or just sit by the dying fire. Instead, I found Hale in his office, surrounded by papers and ledgers, a bottle of whiskey on the desk. "Can't sleep either?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and I saw he hadn't been drinking. The bottle was full, sealed. He'd just been looking at it. "Used to," he said, "after Mary died. Used to drink until I couldn't feel anything, until the world went soft around the edges and I could pretend for a few hours that everything was fine." "What changed?" "Jonah. He needed a father, not a drunk, so I stopped." He pushed the bottle away. "But nights like this, I think about it, about how easy it would be to just not feel this for a while." I sat down across from him. "Feel what?" "Failure. Fear. The weight of knowing I'm going to lose everything my wife and I built, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." "You're not going to lose. How can you know that?" "Because you've got me, and Jonah, and you're too stubborn to quit." He laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Stubborn. That's one word for it. Stupid might be better." "It's not stupid to fight for something you love, isn't it? When you're outgunned and outmanned and the only thing you've got is pride. Pride's kept you alive this long." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just too angry to quit." "Angry at what?" "Everything. My father, Briggs, the whole world that thinks it can just take and never face consequences." I leaned forward. I spent my whole life being powerless, being something that happened to instead of something that made things happen. I'm done with that. This ranch, this life, it's mine now too. Mine as much as yours. And I'll be damned if I let Briggs take it. Something shifted in Hale's expression. "Ilara." "Mum." "No, listen. Tomorrow, I'm going to fix that fence. And the next day, I'm going to check every other section of fence on this property. And the day after that, I'm going to start building something better. something he can't cut, can't tear down, can't break. And you're going to help me. And Jonah's going to help me. And we're going to turn this place into something so strong, so solid, that Briggs breaks himself trying to crack it. That's going to take time, resources we don't have. Then we get creative. We use what we have. We work smarter. And if it's not enough? I met his eyes. Then we go down fighting, but at least we go down together. He held my gaze for a long moment, and I saw something change in him, some ember of hope rekindling. Together, he repeated. All right, together. We worked through the night, making plans, sketching out new fence designs, plotting patrol routes, figuring out how to maximize our limited resources. By the time the sun came up, we had something that looked almost like a strategy. Jonah found us at dawn, both of us hunched over papers, exhausted but energized. Did you two sleep at all? He asked. Who needs sleep? I said. We've got work to do. And work we did. Over the next month, we rebuilt that ranch from the ground up. Not just fixing what was broken, but making it better. Stronger. I learned to weld, to work metal, to build things that would last. We replaced wood fence posts with steel where we could afford it, set up warning bells and tripwires in the vulnerable areas, trained the dogs to patrol at night. It was hard, exhausting. Some days I wanted to collapse and never get up, but every morning I woke up and did it anyway. Because this was my home, my family, my fight. And I'd learned a long time ago that surviving meant never ever giving up. The storm came in August, 3 months after we'd started fortifying the ranch. The sky turned the color of old bruises that morning, purple and green and sickly yellow. The air felt wrong, too still, too heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Hale stood on the porch, watching the clouds build on the horizon. We need to get the livestock in. All of them. Now. We spent the next 4 hours in a frantic race against the weather, driving cattle toward the barn, herding horses into the covered corrals, securing everything that could blow away. The wind picked up gradually, then all at once, hitting us like a physical force. Get inside, Hale shouted over the roar. We've done all we can. We barely made it to the house before the rain started. Not rain, really. More like the sky had split open and was trying to drown the world. The wind screamed around the house, rattling windows and tearing at the roof. Jonah was checking the shutters when we heard the first crack of thunder. Except it wasn't thunder. It was the barn. Through the window, I saw part of the roof tear away, spinning off into the darkness like a leaf. The horses inside were screaming, high and terrified. No, Hale said, already moving toward the door. I grabbed his arm. You can't go out there. You'll be killed. Those animals will die if I don't. Then we go together. He started to argue, but I was already pulling on my coat. Jonah grabbed ropes and lanterns, his face pale but determined. Stay close, Hale shouted. Hold on to each other. We ran out into hell itself. The rain was so thick I could barely see 3 feet ahead. The wind tried to knock us down with every step. But we made it to the barn, all 3 of us, and managed to force the door open. Inside was chaos. Horses rearing and kicking, the remaining roof groaning like it was about to collapse. Water poured through the gaps where shingles had torn away. We have to move them to the house, Hale yelled. It's the only structure strong enough. It was insane, but it was also our only choice. We worked in the screaming dark, leading horses one by one through the storm. Some fought us, too panicked to understand we were trying to help. Others followed docilely, trusting us to know the way. I don't know how long it took. Time lost meaning in that chaos. But eventually, we had all the horses in the enclosed porch area we'd built onto the back of the house. Crowded, but alive. The cattle were on their own. We couldn't move them, couldn't do anything except hope they'd survive the night huddled together. We collapsed inside the house, soaking wet and shaking. Hale immediately started checking us over. Anyone hurt? I'm fine, Jonah said, though he was favoring his left arm. Let me see. It's just bruised. One of the horses kicked me. Hale examined it anyway, his hands gentle despite their roughness. Probably not broken. We'll wrap it. While he tended to Jonah, I moved to the window, watching the storm tear at everything we'd built. A section of fence went flying past, then part of the chicken coop. We're losing it all, I said quietly. Hale came to stand beside me. The land will still be here when it's over. We'll rebuild. With what? We've put everything we have into those repairs. Then we'll find a way. We always do. But I could hear the doubt in his voice, the exhaustion. The storm lasted 36 hours. When it finally passed, we walked out into a world transformed. The barn was half collapsed, the roof completely gone. Fences were down everywhere, torn apart or blown away entirely. The chicken coop had vanished. Of the 50 head of cattle we'd had, we could only find 32. The rest were either dead or scattered so far we'd never find them. The financial loss was staggering, devastating. Jonah sat down on the porch steps and put his head in his hands. We can't come back from this. Pa, we just can't. Hale didn't answer. He just stood there looking at the wreckage of his life's work. I felt something hot and bitter rise in my throat. We'd fought so hard, done everything right, and for what? For nature to come in and destroy it all in a day and a half? I'm going to check the southern pastures, I said. See if any of the cattle drifted that way. I needed to move, to do something, before the helplessness drowned me. I was halfway across what used to be the eastern pasture when I saw the riders. Briggs and 4 of his men picking their way through the debris. When he saw me, he smiled. Actually smiled. "Hell of a storm," he called out. I didn't answer, just waited for him to get closer. "Looks like you took quite a hit," he continued. "Real shame, all that work you put in just to have nature tear it down." "State your business, Briggs." "Business?" He looked around at the destruction. "I'm here with an offer, a good one. Better than before. I'll buy the whole property, give you enough to start over somewhere else, somewhere easier." "Not interested?" "You haven't heard the price." "Don't need to. This land isn't for sale." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're as stubborn as Hale. Look around you, girl. You're finished. Another storm like that and there won't be anything left to sell. Then I guess we'll rebuild. With what money? What resources?" He leaned forward in his saddle. "I know your situation. I know you're hanging on by your fingernails. Pride's a fine thing, but it doesn't pay bills, doesn't fix barns or replace livestock. We'll manage. For how long? A month? 2? Winter's coming. You won't survive it, not like this." I met his eyes. "You'd be surprised what I can survive." Something in my voice made his smile falter. Then it came back harder. "Suit yourself, but when you're starving and freezing and watching that ranch collapse around you, remember I gave you a way out." He rode off, and I stood there shaking. Not from fear, from rage. He was right about one thing. We were in bad shape. Maybe too bad to recover from. But I'd be damned if I'd give him the satisfaction of knowing that. When I got back to the house, I found Hale and Jonah in the kitchen, bent over the account books. The look on their faces told me everything I needed to know. "How bad?" I asked. Hale rubbed his face. "Bad. We lost close to 40% of our livestock. The barn's going to cost more to fix than we have. And that's before we factor in the fence repairs, the equipment damage, the winter feed we lost when the hay storage collapsed." "So what do we do?" "I don't know." He looked older suddenly, worn down. "Maybe Briggs is right. Maybe we should take what we can get and walk away." "No," I said. "Ilara, no, we don't give up. Not now, not after everything. Sometimes knowing when to quit is the smart thing. And sometimes quitting is just another word for surrender." I moved to the table, looking at the numbers that spelled out our doom. There has to be another way, something we're not seeing. "If there is, I can't find it," Hale said, "and I've been looking for 3 hours." Jonah had been quiet, just staring at the ledgers. Now he spoke up. "What if we don't rebuild everything? What if we scale back, focus on what we can actually manage with 3 people? We'd lose half the ranch." "We've already lost half the ranch. The storm took care of that." He pointed to the map on the wall. "But the core of it, the land around the house, the best pastures, that's still intact. We could make that work." "That's exactly what Briggs wants," I said, "for us to give up sections of land. Once we start, where does it stop?" "At survival," Jonah said quietly. "Pa, she's right that we shouldn't quit, but I'm right that we can't keep fighting like this. We need to be smart." Hale looked between us. "So what's the smart play?" I thought about it, turning the problem over in my mind. We needed money, needed resources, needed help. Help. The surrounding ranchers, I said suddenly. Not Briggs, the others. They must have been hit by the storm too. What about them? What if we pool resources, share equipment, labor? We help them rebuild, they help us. Spread the cost and the work. Hale shook his head. They'd never go for it. Everyone out here keeps to themselves.
Because that's how it's always been done. But maybe it's time to try something different. I was warming to the idea now.
Think about it. We've all got the same enemy, Briggs. He's been pushing on their borders too, hasn't he? Yeah, but they've got the money to push back.
For now. But what happens when the next storm hits or the next drought? How long before they're in the same position we are? I leaned forward. We make them see that we're stronger together, that if Briggs takes us down, they're next, and if he gets our land, he gets that much more powerful. Jonah was nodding. It could work. At least it's worth trying.
Hale was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up. All right, we try. But I'll do the talking. Most of these men have known me for 20 years. They'll listen to me before they listen to either of you. Then let's go, I said, before they have time to make deals of their own. We rode out that afternoon, visiting every ranch within a day's ride. Hale made his pitch, and I watched these hardened ranchers listen with varying degrees of interest. Some dismissed us outright. Others were cautiously intrigued. A few, the ones who'd been hit as hard as we had, saw the wisdom in it immediately. By the time we made it back home 3 days later, we had commitments from 4 other ranches to share equipment and labor. It wasn't everything we needed, but it was a start. More than that, it was a message to Briggs that we weren't alone. The rebuilding began the next week. It was slow, frustrating work, but with help from the other ranches, we made progress. The barn got a new roof. The fences started going back up, and then Briggs made his next move. We didn't see it coming. He'd been quiet since the storm, which should have been our first warning. Quiet didn't mean gone. It just meant planning. I was the one who found the evidence. I'd ridden out to check the relocated herd in the western pasture, and something felt wrong. The cattle were agitated, bunched together in a way that wasn't natural. I rode closer and saw why. The fence line had been cut, but not just cut, destroyed. Entire sections pulled down and thrown into the creek, and in the mud, I found something that made my blood run cold: spent rifle casings. Someone had fired shots near the herd, deliberately spooked them, and from the tracks in the soft earth, about 20 head had been driven off. But that wasn't all. Carved into a fence post clearly meant for us to find was a message. Last warning, sell or suffer. I rode back to the house faster than I'd ever ridden before. Hale was in the barn working on a new stall door. We have a problem, I said, and showed him what I'd found. His face went dark, darker than I'd ever seen it. Without a word, he walked to the house and came back out wearing his gun belt. The rifle was in his hand. "Pa, what are you doing?" Jonah asked, emerging from the tack room. "Ending this." "By doing what? Riding over there and getting yourself killed?" "If that's what it takes." I stepped in front of him. "This is what he wants. You ride onto his land, guns blazing, and he kills you and calls it self-defense. We lose everything."
Get out of my way, Alara.
"No." We stood there, locked in a battle of wills. I could see the rage in him, the need to act, to fight back against all the things he couldn't control. "Please," I said quietly, "don't do this. Don't leave Jonah alone. Don't leave me alone." Something in his eyes shifted. He can't keep getting away with this. He won't. But we have to be smarter than him, better than him. How? I didn't have an answer, not yet, but I knew charging in blind wasn't it. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about Briggs's message, about the escalation, about how this was building towards something violent and final. There had to be another way. Some piece I was missing. I was sitting on the porch in the dark when Jonah found me. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No." He sat down beside me.
I'm scared. That's stupid, right? I'm 16, almost a man. Shouldn't be scared. Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart.
Pa's not scared, he's just angry. Your Pa's terrified. He just hides it better. Jonah looked at me. "How do you know?" "Because I recognize it. I've been terrified my whole life. You learn to wear it under your skin where people can't see." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the night sounds. "What are we going to do?" Jonah asked finally.
I don't know, but I'll think of something. You always do.
The trust in his voice nearly broke me. This boy who'd become like a brother. This family I'd found in the wreckage of my old life. I couldn't let Briggs take this from us. The answer came to me 2 days later, while I was in town picking up supplies. The mercantile owner, a weathered woman named Ruth, was complaining about Briggs to another customer. Got a letter from the territorial governor's office, she was saying. Apparently someone's been filing complaints about land disputes out here. They're sending someone to investigate. My ears perked up. The territorial government? Ruth nodded. First time they've paid attention to anything out here in 20 years. Whoever filed those complaints must have been real persistent. I paid for my supplies in a daze, my mind racing. The territorial government, they had authority over the local sheriff, could investigate claims of intimidation, theft, illegal land grabs. It was a long shot, but it was something. I rode back to the ranch and told Hale what I'd heard. You want to file a formal complaint? He asked. That could take months, years even, and there's no guarantee they'd do anything. So we don't wait for them to come to us. We go to them, make our case in person, bring evidence. What evidence? All of it. The cut fences, the stolen cattle, the threatening message, the attempted arson. I pulled out a notebook I'd been keeping, documenting every incident. I've been writing it all down. Dates, damages, witnesses. We've got the other ranchers who will testify to his intimidation tactics. Hale looked at the notebook, then at me. When did you start doing this? After the first theft. I figured we might need proof someday. Something like wonder crossed his face. You've been planning this. I've been preparing for it. There's a difference. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. I'm smarter than most people give me credit for. He almost smiled at that. So we take this to the territorial office, present our case, hope they actually do something. It's better than riding into Briggs's ranch and dying. Marginally, but he was considering it. I could see the wheels turning. It would take at least a week to get there and back, he said. Someone needs to stay here and watch the place. I'll go, I said. You and Jonah stay, protect the ranch. Absolutely not. You're not riding to the capital alone. Why not? Because it's dangerous, because you're... He stopped himself. I'm what? A woman? Young? Bought and paid for? His jaw tightened. I was going to say because you're important to us, to this place, and I don't want anything to happen to you. The words hung in the air between us, charged with something neither of us wanted to name. I can take care of myself, I said quietly. I've been doing it my whole life. I know, but you don't have to anymore, remember? I looked at this man who'd bought me like property and then given me freedom, who taught me to be strong and then gotten angry when I used that strength, who was looking at me now like I was something precious and breakable. Then come with me, I said. We'll go together. Jonah can handle things here for a week. I can, Jonah confirmed from the doorway. We both jumped, not realizing he'd been listening. I know this place as well as either of you, and the other ranchers will help if I need it. Hale looked torn. I don't like leaving you alone. I won't be alone. I'll have the dogs, the rifles, and enough sense not to do anything stupid. Jonah crossed his arms. Besides, this is the smart play. You know it is. We need this complaint filed before Briggs makes his next move. After a long moment, Hale nodded. All right, we leave in 2 days. That gives us time to prepare and make sure everything here is secure. Those 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. We laid out detailed instructions for Jonah, secured all the vulnerable points on the ranch, and made sure he had everything he needed. The morning we left, Jonah stood on the porch looking younger than his 16 years. Be careful, he said. Always am, Hale replied. Then more gently, you're going to be fine. You're tougher than you think. I learned from the best. They embraced, and I felt that familiar ache in my chest. This family that had become mine without me noticing. We rode out as the sun came up, heading east toward the territorial capital. It was a 5-day ride through country that got rougher the farther we went. The first day we barely talked, just rode in companionable silence, each lost in our own thoughts. That night, camped under stars that seemed close enough to touch, Hale finally spoke. I'm glad you're here. I looked over at him, surprised. Yeah? Yeah. I don't think I could do this alone. Any of it. The ranch, the fighting, all of it. You did it for 3 years before I showed up. I survived for 3 years. That's not the same as living. He poked at the fire with a stick. When Mary died, part of me died with her. The part that cared about anything beyond getting through each day. And then you showed up, this angry girl who refused to break, and something in me woke up again. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the emotion in his voice. I'm not trying to make this weird, he continued. I just want you to know that you matter. Not as help, not as someone I bought, as a person, as family. Family, I repeated, testing the word. If you want to be. No pressure, He trailed off, looking frustrated with himself. I want to be, I said quietly. I haven't had family since my mother died, didn't think I'd ever have it again. But you and Jonah, this ranch, it feels like home. Real home. And I'd fight to keep it even if you hadn't paid me a cent. He smiled then, genuine and warm. Good. Because I'm probably going to stop paying you and just call you partner instead. Partner? Equal stake in the ranch, equal say in how it's run. If we're going to survive, we do it together, really together. I felt something loosen in my chest. Something I hadn't realized was still tight. Partners, I said. I like that. We reached the capital on the 5th day, dusty and tired but determined. The territorial office was a large stone building that looked imposing and bureaucratic in equal measure. Inside, we were passed from clerk to clerk until finally ending up in front of a deputy administrator named Thomas Whitfield. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. So, he said, after we'd laid out our case, you're alleging systematic intimidation, theft, and property destruction by a neighboring rancher. That's right, Hale said. And you have evidence? I handed over my notebook. Whitfield read through it carefully, his expression growing more serious with each page. This is detailed, he said. Times, dates, damages, witness statements. This is good work. Will you help us? I asked. I'll open an investigation. Send someone out to interview the parties involved. Examine the evidence on site. He looked up at us. But I have to warn you, these things take time. And if Briggs has the local sheriff in his pocket, it's going to be complicated. How long? Hale asked. Months, maybe. These investigations don't move quickly. We might not have months, I said. Then I suggest you be very careful until we can get there. Don't give him any excuse to escalate. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. We left with a case number and a promise of action, but the timeline was discouraging. Months, Hale said as we walked back to the horses. He'll own the whole valley by then. Or we'll have held him off long enough for justice to catch up. You really believe that? That justice actually works? I thought about my life, about being sold like livestock, about all the times the world had been cruel and unfair and no one had cared. No, I said honestly, but I believe in us. And sometimes that has to be enough. We started the ride home, pushing harder than we had on the way there. Something felt urgent now, like we were racing against a clock only we could hear. We were 2 days out from the ranch when we saw the smoke. At first I thought it was a distant campfire, but as we got closer, the column grew thicker, darker, too big to be anything small. No, Hale breathed and kicked his horse into a gallop. We rode hard, terror giving us speed. As we crested the final rise overlooking the valley, we saw it. The barn was burning, flames reaching into the sky like grasping fingers. And in the yard, surrounded by Briggs and his men, was Jonah. Hale was off his horse before it fully stopped, hitting the ground running. I was right behind him, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Jonah was on his knees in the dirt, his face bloodied, hands tied behind his back. Briggs stood over him with a pistol drawn, and his men formed a loose circle around them both. "Let him go!" Hale roared, his rifle coming up. Briggs turned, and the smile on his face was cold. "Welcome home, Hale. We were just having a conversation with your boy here about property rights. If you've heard him, he's fine, mostly. Got a little mouthy when we came to discuss your future, so we had to teach him some manners." I could see the calculation in Hale's eyes. 7 men against 2. Jonah in the middle. The barn already lost. One wrong move and his son would die. "What do you want?" Hale asked, and I heard the defeat creeping into his voice. "What I've always wanted. This land. You sign it over right now and we all walk away. The boy lives. You get enough money to start over somewhere else." "And if I refuse?" Briggs cocked the pistol and pressed it against Jonah's temple.
The boy went very still, his eyes finding his father's. Then I'm real sorry about your tragic loss. Man goes crazy after losing his ranch, kills his own son before turning the gun on himself. Sheriff will rule it murder-suicide. Sad story. You're insane, I said. Briggs glanced at me. And you're still here. Thought you'd have run by now, girl. Smart girls know when to leave a sinking ship. Guess I'm not that smart. Something flickered in Hale's expression. He was looking past Briggs, past the men, at something behind them. His eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw it. The other ranchers. Riding in from the north, at least a dozen of them. Hale had seen them, now I had too. But Briggs and his men were focused on us, their backs to the approaching riders. I had to keep them distracted. You know what's funny? I said, taking a step forward. You went to all this trouble, all this planning, cut fences, stole cattle, burned buildings. And for what? A piece of land you think makes you powerful? It does make me powerful, Briggs said. No, it makes you desperate. Because powerful men don't need to threaten children. They don't need to burn barns and hide behind corrupt sheriffs. I kept walking, drawing his attention. Powerful men build things. You just destroy them. Shut your mouth. Why? Truth hurt? I was close enough now to see the anger in his eyes. You're nothing but a bully with a gun, and bullies only win when people are too scared to fight back. The riders were closer now, close enough that I could make out faces. The Hendersons from the Western Ranch, the Yates family, Old Man Morrison and his 3 sons. Elara, stop, Hale said quietly, and I heard the warning in his voice, don't push too far. But I was done being careful. You want this land? I asked Briggs. Then take it, right now. Shoot that boy and see what happens. Because we filed a complaint with the territorial government. They're opening an investigation into you. Everything you've done, every crime, every theft. Briggs's face went white, then red. You're lying. Am I? We just got back from the Capitol, handed over a notebook full of evidence. Dates, times, witness statements. I smiled, and it felt sharp. You're finished, Briggs. You just don't know it yet. I'll kill you, he said, turning the gun from Jonah to me. Then do it. But those riders coming up behind you, they'll see it, and they'll testify. And instead of just losing your land, you'll hang. He spun around then, finally seeing what I'd been stalling for. The dozen riders, all armed, all watching. Tom Henderson, the oldest of the group, rode forward. That's enough, Colton. Let the boy go. This isn't your business, Henderson. The hell it isn't. You've been pushing on all of us. We're making it our business. He gestured to the others. We're done letting you run roughshod over this valley. Briggs looked around at the circle closing in. His men were nervous now, hands drifting toward their weapons, but not quite drawing. The odds had shifted, 7 against 15, and everyone knew it. This isn't over, Briggs said. Yeah, Hale said, moving forward to cut Jonah's bonds. It is. You're done here. The territorial government's coming. These witnesses saw you holding my son at gunpoint, saw your men burn my barn. You've got nothing left to stand on. For a long moment, Briggs just stood there, his whole body rigid with rage. Then he lowered the gun. You'll regret this, he said. All of you. Maybe, Henderson replied, but at least we'll regret it together. Briggs and his men rode out slowly, trying to maintain some dignity and retreat. We watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Then Jonah collapsed. Hale caught him, lowering him gently to the ground. Easy. You're all right now. You're safe. I'm sorry, Pa. I tried to stop them, but there were too many. You did good. You stayed alive. That's all that matters. I knelt beside them, checking Jonah over. His face was bruised, split lip, but nothing that wouldn't heal. Can you stand? Yeah, just dizzy. We got him up and into the house while the other ranchers dealt with the fire. The barn was a loss, but they managed to keep it from spreading. Henderson found us in the kitchen after we'd gotten Jonah cleaned up and resting. That was quite a gamble you took, he said to me. Goading him like that. I saw you coming. Figured if I kept him focused on me, he wouldn't notice until it was too late. Could have gotten yourself killed. Could have. Didn't. He smiled faintly. You've got steel in you, girl. Hale's lucky to have you. After the others left, promising to help rebuild the barn, Hale and I sat on the porch watching the last of the smoke dissipate into the evening sky. You scared the hell out of me, he said finally. I scared myself. Walking up to an armed man like that, what were you thinking?
that Jonah needed time, that you needed backup, that someone had to do something before everything fell apart. He was quiet for a long moment. You could have died. So could you, so could Jonah, but we didn't. We won. Did we? The barn's gone. We're still broke. Briggs might be down, but he's not out. We're alive. We're together. That's a win in my book. He turned to look at me, and in the fading light, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, something raw and unguarded. When I saw that smoke, he said quietly, when I thought something had happened to you or Jonah, I realized something. This ranch, this land, it doesn't mean anything without the people I care about on it. Marcus, let me finish. I've been holding on to this place like it was all I had left of Mary. Like if I let it go, I'd lose her completely. But that's not true. She's in Jonah. She's in the memories. And she'd want me to live, not just survive. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere along the way you became more than help, more than family. You became... He stopped, struggling with the words. I don't know how to say this without sounding like an old fool. My heart was pounding. Try. I care about you. More than I should. More than is probably appropriate given how we started. But I can't help it. You're strong and brave, and you've brought this place back to life. You've brought me back to life. I stared at him, unable to speak. All this time I'd been so focused on proving myself, on earning my place, that I hadn't noticed what was growing between us. Or maybe I had noticed and been too scared to acknowledge it. I'm not asking you to feel the same way, he continued. I just needed you to know. Needed to be honest, at least this once. How long? I asked. How long what? How long have you felt this way? He smiled ruefully. Honestly, since you charged into that corral to save me from the stallion. Maybe before. Hard to say when it started. Just know that somewhere between you showing up here looking half-starved and angry and you walking up to an armed man to buy time for your family, I fell completely and irreversibly in love with you. The words hung in the air between us, huge and terrifying and real. I'm 23, I said. You're almost 40. People will talk. People always talk. I've stopped caring what they think. You bought me. Paid money for me, like I was cattle. I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I can't change how we started. I can only change where we go from here. And where do you want to go? Wherever you'll have me. As a partner. As a friend. As more. If you want that. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The girl I'd been, sold and powerless. The woman I'd become, strong and fierce and unbreakable. The family I'd found in this harsh, beautiful place. I don't know how to do this, I said quietly. I've never been loved before. Not like this. Don't know if I'll be any good at it. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. What about Jonah? What about him? How's he going to feel about this? Hale laughed softly. He's been pushing me to tell you for months. Keeps saying I'm being an idiot. That startled a laugh out of me. Really? Really? Kid sees more than I give him credit for. I looked at this man who'd bought my freedom and then given me something more valuable. A choice. A chance. A home. I love you too, I said, and the words felt strange and right all at once. Don't know when it happened. Maybe when you gave me boots and told me I could leave any time. Maybe when you taught me to work the land like I was your equal. Maybe when I saw you with Jonah and realized what a real father looked like. Elara, I'm not finished. I love you, but I'm terrified. Because everything I've ever loved has been taken from me. My mother, my freedom, my choices. And I don't know if I can survive losing you too. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, he took my hand in his. I can't promise I won't die. Can't promise we won't lose the ranch or that life won't be hard. But I can promise I'll fight for you. For us. Every single day. That's enough, I said. That's all I need. He pulled me into his arms then, and I let him. Let myself be held for the first time in years without flinching, without waiting for the other shoe to drop. We sat like that as the stars came out, not talking, just being. And something in me that had been tight and guarded for my entire life finally started to relax. The next few months were hard but good. We rebuilt the barn with help from the other ranchers. The territorial investigator came through, interviewed everyone, and left with enough evidence to file formal charges against Briggs for intimidation, theft, and arson. Briggs disappeared before they could arrest him. Rumor said he'd fled to Mexico. His land was seized and sold off in parcels to the surrounding ranchers, including us. We bought the eastern section, the land with Mary's ashes. It felt right. Hale and I didn't rush things. We courted the old-fashioned way, taking walks after dinner, sitting on the porch talking until late, learning each other slowly, carefully. Jonah watched all this with poorly concealed amusement. "You two are the slowest couple I've ever seen," he said one night at dinner. "We're being respectful," Hale replied. "You're being ridiculous. Everyone in 3 counties knows you're in love. Just get married already." I choked on my water. "Jonah!" "What? I'm not wrong." He looked between us. "I'm not, am I?" Hale and I exchanged glances. "The boy's got a point," Hale said. "Are you proposing?" I asked. "I don't know. Am I?" "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "To be fair, you probably haven't heard many proposals." I threw a roll at him. He caught it, laughing.
"Seriously, though," Jonah said, "I wouldn't mind. You being official family, you already are, really. Might as well make it legal." Something in his voice made me look closer. "You really mean that?" "Yeah. I know Ma's gone, and I'll always miss her, but she'd want Pa to be happy, and you make him happy. You make both of us happy." He shrugged, trying to look casual. "Besides, someone needs to keep you two from working yourselves to death." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Jonah,
"Don't get all emotional on me. I'm just stating facts." But he was smiling, and I saw the approval in his eyes, the acceptance. That night, after Jonah had gone to bed, Hale and I stood on the porch under the stars. "He's right, you know," Hale said. "We should make it official." "Is that a proposal?"
no.
"This is—" He got down on one knee, and my breath caught. "Elara Vance, you came into my life when I was broken and half dead, and you brought me back. You saved my son, my ranch, and my soul. I don't have a ring, don't have fancy words, but I have a heart that's yours completely and a life I want to spend with you. Will you marry me?" I looked down at this man kneeling in the dirt, offering me everything he had. A year ago, I'd been sold like property. Now I was being asked to choose.
"Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He stood and kissed me, gentle and sure, and I felt something click into place. This was home. This was family. This was love. We married a month later in a simple ceremony at the ranch. The other ranchers came, and half the town. Even Dutch, the useless sheriff, showed up with a bottle of whiskey as a gift. I wore a dress that Henderson's wife had made. Simple cotton, but clean and new. Hale wore his best suit, the one he'd gotten married in before. Jonah stood as witness, beaming like he'd orchestrated the whole thing himself. When the minister asked if anyone objected, there was silence. When he pronounced us married, Hale kissed me in front of everyone, and I didn't care who was watching. This was my life now. My choice. My family. That night, alone in the room that was now ours, Hale was nervous. "I haven't done this in a while," he admitted. "Neither have I. We'll figure it out." And we did, learning each other slowly, carefully, with patience and care. It wasn't perfect or smooth or like the romance novels probably described, but it was real and honest and ours. Afterward, lying in the darkness, Hale traced patterns on my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm happy. I don't think I've ever been happy before. Not like this." "Me neither. Not since Mary. Does it feel wrong, being happy with me?" "No. It feels like coming back to life." He pulled me closer. "She'd like you, I think. Mary. She always said I needed someone who'd stand up to me. Someone strong. I wish I could have met her." "Me too. You would have been friends." We lay there in comfortable silence until I felt brave enough to say what I'd been thinking for weeks. "I want a baby." He went very still. "Yeah?" "Yeah, I want to build a family here, a real one. Want to fill this house with noise and life, the way you and Mary planned." "Are you sure? You're young. We could wait." "I've been waiting my whole life for something to call mine. I'm done waiting." He kissed my forehead. Then let's have a baby, or several, fill this whole house with them. Several might be ambitious. We've never been afraid of ambitious before. I smiled in the dark. No, I guess we haven't.
2 months later, I missed my monthly bleeding. At first, I thought it was stress or the hard work, but when it happened again, I knew. I waited to tell Hale until I was sure. Waited until the doctor in town confirmed it, then I planned out how to break the news. I was in the kitchen making dinner when he came in from the fields, dusty and tired. "Smells good," he said, kissing my cheek. "Sit down, I have something to tell you." The tone of my voice made him nervous. "What's wrong?"
Nothing's wrong. Just sit. He sat, looking worried. Jonah wandered in, attracted by the smell of food. I looked at both of them, these men who'd become my whole world. "I'm pregnant," I said. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Jonah whooped and Hale stood so fast his chair fell over. He pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was made of glass. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Doctor confirmed it this morning." "A baby. We're having a baby." "Yeah, we are." He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and I felt his joy mixed with terror, mixed with love. "I'm going to be a brother," Jonah said, looking dazed. "I'm going to have a little brother or sister." "You okay with that?" I asked. "Are you kidding? This is the best news ever." He hugged me carefully, like I might break. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving us a family again, for being here, for everything." That night, Hale held me in bed, his hand on my still flat stomach. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Me too." "What if I mess it up? What if something happens to you? What if—" "Stop. We can't live in the what ifs. We just have to live." "I love you so much it scares me." "Good. That means it's real." The pregnancy was hard. I was sick for months, could barely keep food down. But I kept working, kept moving, because stopping felt like giving up. Hale tried to make me rest. I ignored him. Jonah tried to do all my chores. I did them anyway. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met," Hale said one morning, finding me mucking out stalls at dawn. "You knew that when you married me. Thought you'd ease up when you got pregnant. Then you don't know me at all." He smiled and kissed me, tasting like coffee in morning. "I know you perfectly. That's why I love you." The baby came in early spring, after a labor that lasted 20 hours and nearly killed me. The doctor from town was there, and Henderson's wife who knew about birthing. Hale stayed the whole time, holding my hand, talking me through it even though he was white as a sheet. When the baby finally came, a girl with dark hair and my eyes, he cried. Actually cried. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're perfect." I was too exhausted to argue. We named her Sarah, after Hale's mother, Sarah Vance Hale. Jonah met his sister with reverent awe, holding her like she was made of spun glass. "She's so small," he said. "You were small once too," Hale replied. "Was I ever this small?" "Smaller, believe it or not." Watching them together, this family I'd built from nothing but will and love, I felt something settle in my chest. This was it. This was everything I'd been fighting for. The first few months were brutal. Sarah cried constantly, slept in short bursts, demanded everything I had. But I'd survived worse. I'd survived being sold, survived storms and fires and armed men. I could survive motherhood. Hale helped when he could, walking the floor with Sarah at night so I could sleep. Jonah pitched in too, bouncing his sister when she fussed, making faces to get her to smile. We were exhausted and overwhelmed and desperately happy. One night when Sarah was finally asleep and Jonah had gone to bed, Hale and I sat on the porch watching the stars. "Remember when we first met?" he asked. "Hard to forget. You bought me like livestock." "I paid for labor. There's a difference." "Keep telling yourself that." He smiled. "Look at us now, though. Married, parents, running a successful ranch. Who would have thought? Not me. When I first saw you, I thought you'd last maybe a month before asking to leave. What changed your mind?" "You did. Every day you proved me wrong, proved everyone wrong." I leaned against him, tired but content. "I proved myself right. That's all that matters." "Yeah, you did." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds, an owl in the distance, the wind through the grass, the small, sweet sounds of our daughter breathing inside. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Coming here, staying? I thought about the girl I'd been, angry and powerless and so determined to survive that I'd forgotten how to live. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, strong and loved and building something that would last. No, I said. I don't regret a single thing. Not even the hard parts? Especially not the hard parts. They made me who I am. He kissed the top of my head. Then I won't regret them either, because who you are is everything I need.
Inside, Sarah started crying. We both sighed. My turn, Hale said, standing. You sure? Yeah. You rest. I watched him go inside, this man who'd given me everything without meaning to. Then I looked out at the valley, at the land we'd fought so hard to keep. It wasn't perfect. The barn still needed work. The fences needed constant mending. Money was always tight. But it was ours, completely ours, and that was worth everything. Sarah was 3 months old when the letter came. I was hanging wash on the line, the baby strapped to my chest in a wrap Henderson's wife had shown me how to make, when I saw the rider approaching. Official-looking man on a government horse, carrying a leather satchel. Hale came out of the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. Help you? Looking for Marcus Hale and Ilara Hale. That's us, I said, walking over. The man dismounted and pulled a thick envelope from his satchel. Territorial Court sent me. You're needed to testify in the case against Colton Briggs. They found him in El Paso trying to cross into Mexico. Hale took the envelope, his face unreadable. When? 3 weeks. You'll need to be in the capital by the 15th. He glanced at me, at the baby. Both of you, your testimony is required. After he left, Hale and I stood in the yard staring at the summons. 3 weeks, I said. Sarah will barely be 4 months old. We could ask for a delay. Medical reasons. No, we finish this. We end it properly. I adjusted Sarah, who was starting to fuss. Besides, I want to look him in the eye when they convict him. Want him to see what he didn't break. Hale smiled faintly. You're terrifying sometimes. You know that? Good. People should be a little scared of me. We left Jonah in charge of the ranch again, though this time with 2 hired hands we'd finally been able to afford. The trip to the capital was harder with a baby, but Sarah was a good traveler, sleeping through most of the journey. The trial lasted 4 days. Briggs sat in the defendant's chair looking smaller than I remembered, his face pale and tight. He wouldn't look at us when we testified, wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I told the court everything, the threats, the thefts, the fire. The night he held Jonah at gunpoint, I spoke clearly and calmly, and I watched Briggs shrink with every word. When it was Hale's turn, he was just as steady, just as certain. The other ranchers testified too, Henderson and Yates and Morrison, all of them laying out the pattern of intimidation and violence. The jury took less than 2 hours to convict him on all counts. Briggs got 10 years in territorial prison. His remaining assets were seized and distributed as restitution to his victims. We got enough money to finish rebuilding the barn properly and buy more livestock. Enough to breathe a little easier. Outside the courthouse, Hale took my hand. It's really over. Yeah, it is. How do you feel? I thought about it. Tired, relieved, ready to go home. Me too. We started the journey back the next morning. Sarah was fussy, picking up on our exhaustion, but we made good time. As we crested the final ridge and saw the valley spread out below us, something in my chest loosened. Home. This was home. Jonah met us in the yard, grinning. How'd it go? 10 years? Hale said. He's done. Good. Maybe now we can actually focus on ranching instead of fighting off land grabbers. He wasn't wrong. Over the next year, we threw ourselves into building the ranch properly. We hired 3 permanent hands, good men who worked hard and didn't ask too many questions about the woman who ran things alongside the boss. Because that's what I'd become. Not just Hale's wife, not just help. A real partner in every sense of the word. I handled the books, managed the supplies, made decisions about livestock and crops and which fields to rotate. Hale trusted my judgment completely, and the men learned to as well. She's tougher than most foremen I've worked for, I heard one of them say once, and smarter too. I took that as the compliment it was meant to be. Sarah grew from a fussy infant into a determined toddler with her father's stubbornness and my tendency to question everything. By the time she was 2, she was helping Jonah feed the chickens and getting underfoot in the barn. She's going to be a handful, Hale said one evening, watching her chase the barn cat with single-minded focus. Good. The world's hard on soft people. You want her to be hard? I want her to be strong. There's a difference. He understood what I meant. Sarah would grow up knowing she was loved, knowing she was valued, knowing she could be anything she wanted. But she'd also grow up knowing how to work, how to fight, how to survive. The world wouldn't hand her anything. We'd make sure she knew how to take it herself. When Sarah was 3, I got pregnant again. This time it was easier, like my body remembered what to do. The sickness was milder, the fear less consuming. Hale was cautiously optimistic. You think it's a boy this time. Does it matter? No, just curious. Then stop being curious and help me with this fence. He laughed and picked up his tools. We were mending the eastern section, the part we'd bought from Briggs's seized assets, the land Mary had loved. Do you ever talk to her? I asked. To Mary? He glanced at me, surprised. Sometimes, in my head, mostly just to tell her about Sarah, about you, about how the ranch is doing. What do you think she'd say? About us? Honestly, I think she'd be happy. She never wanted me to be alone, used to make me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd find someone else. I always thought it was morbid, her talking like that. Turned out she knew something I didn't. That she was going to die young. That life doesn't stop just because you want it to. That you keep going, or you die too, just slower. I thought about that, about survival and living and the space between them. I'm glad you kept going, I said. Me too. Otherwise I'd have missed all this. Missed you. The baby came in autumn, a boy this time. We named him Thomas, after Hale's grandfather. He was quieter than Sarah had been, more observant. He'd watch everything with serious dark eyes, like he was taking notes. This one's going to be the smart one, Jonah predicted, holding his new brother. Sarah's smart, I protested. Sarah's clever. Thomas is going to be smart. There's a difference. I couldn't argue with that. Sarah was already showing signs of being able to talk her way out of anything. Thomas seemed like he'd be the one to think things through first. Between the two of them, we'd be in trouble. Jonah was 20 now, grown into a man without us quite noticing. He still worked the ranch, but he'd started talking about veterinary school, about going to the state university for a few years. You should go, I told him one evening. We were alone in the kitchen, the rest of the house asleep. Follow that dream. The ranch needs me. The ranch will be fine. We've got good help now. Your father and I can manage. You sure? Positive. Besides, you'll come back. This place is in your blood, but you should see what else is out there first. Learn everything you can. Then come back and make this operation even better. He smiled. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just know what it's like to not have choices. You have them. Use them. He left the following spring, heading east to the university. Hale took it harder than he'd expected, walking around the house like he'd lost a limb. He's growing up, I said. That's what we wanted. I know, doesn't make it easier. Nothing about raising kids is easy, but watching them become their own people, that's the point. Sarah missed her big brother terribly, following Hale around like a shadow to fill the void. Thomas, barely a year old, didn't understand what had changed, but picked up on the sadness anyway. We adjusted. We always did. The ranch continued to grow. By the time Sarah was 6 and Thomas was 4, we were running over 200 head of cattle and had started breeding horses seriously. The money was steady, the future secure. I'd learned to read and write properly over the years, teaching myself from Jonah's old school books and newspapers Hale brought from town. I kept detailed records of everything, building a system that tracked every animal, every expense, every profit. You should run for the Territorial Council, Henderson said one day. We were at a meeting of the Ranchers Association, discussing water rights. You've got the head for it. Better than most of the idiots they've got now. I'm a woman. They wouldn't let me. Times are changing. A few years back, they wouldn't have let you run a ranch either. Look at you now. He had a point, but I wasn't interested in politics. I was interested in building something that would last, something that would outlive me. When Sarah was 8, she asked me about my childhood. We were in the garden, pulling weeds in the late summer heat.
Thomas was nearby, playing in the dirt with wooden horses Hale had carved for him. What was it like, she asked, growing up? I considered lying, considered telling her some sanitized version that wouldn't scare her. But Sarah was smart and fierce, and she deserved the truth. Hard, I said. My mother died when I was young. My father wasn't a kind man. He struggled with things he couldn't control, and that made him mean. Did he hurt you? Not with his fists, but there are other ways to hurt people. Ways that don't leave bruises you can see. She was quiet, processing this. What happened to him? He sold me to your father when I was 17. Needed money more than he needed a daughter. Her eyes went wide. Papa bought you? Yes, but not the way you're thinking. He paid for labor, for help with the ranch, and he gave me something nobody else ever had, a choice. He told me I could leave any time I wanted, that I was free. But you stayed. I stayed because I found something here worth staying for. Your father, Jonah, this land. Later, you and Thomas. This became my home because I chose it, not because I was trapped in it. Sarah thought about this for a long moment. I'm glad you stayed. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That night, I told Hale about the conversation. You think she understood? He asked. I think she understood enough. She'll understand more as she gets older. You didn't have to tell her. Could have kept it simple. I could have. But I want her to know that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things. That survival can turn into something beautiful if you let it. He pulled me close. You're beautiful. You know that? I'm scarred and weathered and my hands are rough as leather. Yeah, beautiful. I smiled against his chest. After all these years, he could still surprise me with his certainty. Jonah came back after 4 years with a degree and a fiancée, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine, who took one look at the ranch and rolled up her sleeves. You're going to fit right in, I told her the first day. That's the plan, she said. Jonah's told me all about you, said you're the toughest woman he's ever met. He exaggerates. Does he? He said you walked up to an armed man to buy time for your family, said you rebuilt this place from nothing. That doesn't sound like exaggeration. I did what I had to do, same as anyone. No, not same as anyone, same as someone strong enough to do what others won't. I liked her immediately. They got married that fall in the same spot Hale and I had, with the whole valley in attendance. Sarah was the flower girl and took her job very seriously. Thomas was the ring bearer and promptly lost the rings in the grass, causing a minor panic before they were found. Watching Jonah stand there with Catherine, looking at her the way Hale looked at me, I felt something click into place. This was legacy. This was what we'd been building toward. Not just a ranch, a family. A place where people could grow and thrive and become who they were meant to be. Jonah and Catherine built a house on the western section of the property, close enough to help but far enough for privacy. Within a year, they had a baby of their own, a girl they named Mary. Hale cried when he held her. His mother's name and his first wife's name carried forward into a new generation. She would have loved this, he said, meaning his first wife. All of it. I know. Thank you for giving me this, for giving us this. I didn't give you anything. We built it together. Still, thank you. The years rolled on, bringing changes both small and large. Sarah grew tall and strong, more interested in horses than housework, which suited me fine. Thomas became the thoughtful one, always watching, always learning, asking questions that made us think. We added more land, more cattle, more horses. The ranch became one of the most successful in the territory, known for quality livestock and fair dealing. People stopped looking at me like I was strange for running things alongside Hale. Instead, they came to me for advice, for help, for the kind of wisdom that only comes from surviving the unsurvivable. I was 40 when Hale started slowing down. Nothing dramatic, just a gradual easing of the relentless pace he'd kept his whole life. He let Jonah and the hired hands handle more of the heavy work, spent more time with the grandkids, teaching them the things his father had taught him. Getting old, he said one morning, watching his hands shake slightly as he poured coffee. We're all getting old. That's how time works. You're still young. I'm 40. That's not young. You look young. Act young. I'm the one falling apart. You're not falling apart. You're just worn from hard use like good leather. He smiled at that. Good leather. I'll take it. We were sitting on the porch watching the sun come up over the valley when he said it.
I want to plant an apple tree.
What?
An apple tree. In the yard. Something that'll be here long after we're gone. Something the kids and grandkids can sit under. All right, we'll plant an apple tree. We did it the next week, all of us together. Hale and me, Jonah and Catherine, the kids. We dug the hole in the front yard where it would catch the morning sun and planted a young sapling we'd ordered from the catalog. This tree's going to outlive all of us, Hale said, patting the soil around it. 100 years from now, our great-great-grandchildren will eat apples from it and wonder who planted it. And someone will tell them, I said, about the stubborn rancher and the girl he bought who turned out to be stronger than anyone expected. That's one version. What's the other version? The true one. About two broken people who found each other and built something that mattered. Sarah, 14 now, and too smart for her own good, spoke up. Both versions are true, Papa. That's what makes it a good story. She was right. Both versions were true. The messy, complicated reality and the simpler truth underneath it. We'd survived. We'd built. We'd loved. And that was enough. I was 45 when Hale got sick. Nothing dramatic at first, just a cough that wouldn't go away. Then the exhaustion, the weight loss, the way he'd wince when he thought no one was looking. The doctor in town referred us to a specialist in the capital. The specialist gave us news we didn't want to hear. Cancer. Lungs, probably from years of breathing dust and smoke. Advanced. Inoperable. 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. We rode home in silence, the diagnosis sitting between us like a third person in the wagon. I'm not ready, Hale said finally. I know. There's so much I still want to do. Want to see Thomas graduate school. Want to see Sarah married. Want to meet more grandchildren. I know. I'm scared. I took his hand. Me too. We told the family that night. Jonah took it hard, disappearing into the barn for hours. Catherine cried quietly. The kids didn't fully understand, but they knew something bad was happening. Sarah, wise beyond her years, just hugged her father and said, "We'll make the most of the time we have." And we did. We made every day count. Hale taught Thomas everything he could about running the ranch, cramming years of knowledge into months. He took Sarah riding every morning, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. He helped Jonah build a new barn, working despite the pain, refusing to give in to the weakness creeping through his body. And at night, he held me, and we talked about the life we'd built together. Do you have any regrets? I asked one night. One. What? That I won't get to grow old with you, won't get to see what you build after I'm gone. You'll see, from wherever you end up. You believe in that? An afterlife? I don't know what I believe, but I choose to believe you'll be watching, that Mary will be there to greet you, that you'll both be proud of what we've made. He kissed my forehead. I'm already proud. You took a dying ranch and a broken man and made them live again. You gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. You deserved it. You just didn't know it yet. The end came faster than we expected. One morning he woke up unable to breathe properly. By afternoon the doctor said it was time to make him comfortable. We gathered around his bed, all of us. Jonah and Catherine, Sarah and Thomas. The grandkids too young to understand. I sat beside him, holding his hand. Don't let this place die, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Keep building, keep growing. I will. Take care of them, all of them. Always. I love you. From the moment you stood up to that stallion, I loved you. I love you too. Always have. Always will. He smiled, then closed his eyes. An hour later, he was gone. We buried him in the eastern pasture next to where Mary's ashes were scattered. The whole valley came to pay respects, and I stood there dry-eyed and numb, watching them lower the man I loved into the ground. It wasn't until everyone left, until I was alone in the house that had become too big and too quiet, that I finally broke. I cried for the boy who'd never get to see his father old, for the girl who'd lost the only real parent she'd known, for myself, losing my partner, my love, my home, but most of all, I cried for the future we wouldn't have together. The next few months were the hardest of my life, harder than being sold, harder than fighting Briggs, harder than anything. Every morning I woke up and he wasn't there. Every decision I made, I wanted to ask his opinion, Every sunset, I wanted to share it with him, but I kept going. Because that's what he taught me. You keep going, or you die too, just slower. I threw myself into the ranch work, managing everything with an iron fist. I made decisions, solved problems, kept the operation running smoothly. Sarah helped, mature beyond her 18 years. Thomas, 16 now, stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. Jonah was there too, solid and steady. We made it work. 1 year after Hale died, I stood under the apple tree we'd planted together. It had grown, branches spreading wider, roots digging deeper. In a few more years, it would bear fruit. Sarah found me there, her own baby on her hip. She'd married a good man from the next valley over, someone who understood ranching and didn't mind that his wife was tougher than him. "You okay, Mama?" she asked. I looked at her, this fierce young woman who'd grown up knowing she was loved and valued and capable of anything, who'd never been sold or dismissed or told she was less than. "Yeah," I said, "I'm okay." "You miss him, every day. But he's still here, in you, in Thomas, in this place we built together." She put her free arm around me. "Tell me about when you first came here, the real story." So I did. I told her about being sold for $300, about the long ride west with a man I didn't know, about learning to fight and build and love. I told her about storms and fires and enemies who tried to break us, about finding strength in the worst moments, about choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. "You're the strongest person I know," Sarah said when I finished. "I'm not strong, I'm just stubborn." Same thing, basically. Maybe it was. I lived another 30 years after Hale died. 30 years of watching the ranch grow and thrive, of seeing Sarah raise 4 children who all grew up knowing the value of hard work, of watching Thomas become a brilliant ranch manager, implementing new techniques that doubled our productivity, of seeing Jonah's children and grandchildren carry on the legacy. By the time I was 75, the ranch sprawled across twice the land we'd started with. We employed 20 people year-round. The Hale name was synonymous with quality and fairness across 3 territories, and all of it started with a girl who was sold like cattle and refused to stay broken. I was 82 when I knew my time was coming, the same kind of knowing that had told me when storms were approaching, when cattle were sick, when danger was near. I gathered the family around me one last time. All of them. The children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a whole tree of people who existed because I'd chosen to survive. "Listen to me," I said, and despite my age, my voice was still strong. "Everything you have, everything you are, you built yourselves. But you came from people who knew how to fight, how to survive, how to build something from nothing." I looked at each of them in turn. Don't forget that. When things get hard, when you want to quit, remember that you come from a woman who was sold for $300 and ended up owning half a valley. Remember that impossible isn't permanent, that broken can be rebuilt, that you're stronger than you think. "We'll remember, Great-Grandma," one of the youngest said. "Good, that's all I ask." That night, I walked out to the apple tree one last time. It was huge now, branches spreading like arms reaching for the sky. The trunk was thick and strong, the roots deep and unmovable. I sat beneath it, leaning against the bark, and closed my eyes. I thought about Hale, wondered if he was waiting somewhere. Thought about the life we'd built together from pain and determination and stubborn love. I thought about the girl I'd been, angry and scared and so desperate to prove she was worth more than the price paid for her. And I thought about the woman I'd become. A wife, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a rancher, a partner, a fighter, someone who'd taken every terrible thing that happened and transformed it into something beautiful. The wind rustled through the apple tree's leaves, and I swear I heard Hale's voice in it. "You did good," he seemed to say. "You built something that'll last forever." "We built it," I whispered back, "together." I opened my eyes one more time, looking at the ranch spread out before me in the fading light, the house where I'd raised my family, the barn we'd rebuilt 3 times, the pastures full of cattle and horses, the fences standing strong against whatever came. This was legacy. Not the land or the money or the name. The legacy was the people. The strength passed down through generations. The knowledge that you could survive anything if you refused to break. I closed my eyes again, and this time I didn't open them. They found me the next morning, sitting under the apple tree with a slight smile on my face. At peace, finally. They buried me next to Hale, our graves together under the open sky we'd both loved. And the family carried on, just like I'd taught them to. Because that's what we do. We survive, we build, we love, and we never, ever give up. The apple tree still stands there, 100 years later. Massive and ancient and still bearing fruit every autumn. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, people say they can hear whispers in its branches. The story of a girl who was sold for $300 and ended up building an empire. The story of love found in the hardest places. The story of survival that became something greater. And every person who sits beneath that tree, who eats its fruit, who rests in its shade, carries forward the truth that Alara Vance Hale spent her whole life proving. That you're never just what someone else makes you, that broken things can become beautiful. That the power to transform your life has always been in your own hands. You just have to be brave enough to use it.